This lecture focuses on introducing you to the basic formatting and visual design principles of effective memos. The sample memo used here to illustrate this lecture itself presents basic guidelines for memo format, structure, style, and content. Please feel free to pause and review the on-screen content to help reinforce and clarify the information being presented. For more detailed information regarding structure and content as they relate to specific writing tasks, such as the informative or request for action memo, please refer to the chapter of your textbook discussing memos. First, an overview of the genre. The memorandum is one of the most frequently used forms of communication in the professional world and is generally used as a documented way of communicating within an organization. They are written in a standard format and style in order to promote efficient reading, giving the audience what it expects from you in a familiar way, which reduces the time and effort they put into understanding the document. Memoranda are sometimes very brief notes, though they can be, in such cases as proposal or report memos, multi-page documents requiring numerous sections and headings. This sample document lays somewhere in between. Regardless of length, precision, clarity, and conciseness are your benchmarks. Say what you must as briefly and directly and clearly as you can. Designing a memo. We begin a memo with a designation that prepares the reader by telling her what type of document she will be reading. This can be identified with the full term, memorandum, or the abbreviation, memo, placed either centered or flush left at the top of your page. As with all documents, you will have visual choices to make regarding the font, that is, the letter style, and point, or the letter size, as well. Whatever visual choices you make, be sure that the document looks clean, is easily readable, and is appropriate for its context. For example, a champagne script is beautiful but difficult to read, not a good business choice. On the other hand, a comic font, as seen here, is easy enough to read, but would not generally be an appropriate choice for a conservative business, though it might be just right for entertainment or child-centered businesses. Next is your heading. Your heading always contains exactly 4 components, as shown here: the from, to, date, and subject lines, each line consisting of the tag, a colon, a space, and then the specific information for that memo's context. A number of format variations exist for constructing headings, as you will see in the difference between this and the next sample. This heading presents the tags and their context information, each separately aligned left in column form, by using the tab function after the colon. The next sample uses simple double spacing after the colon, which promotes readability, but is not as clean a look. Notice the difference. Other variations include the presentation of the tags themselves. Your from tag could be abbreviated to capital FR, as shown here, and your subject tag could be either abbreviated to SUBJ, period, or capital RE, for regarding, as shown in this variation as well. Additionally, you have choices in presenting the date, where the first heading model uses a slash shorthand style. This sample presents the date in a European longhand style, a more formal touch. You can also rearrange the sequence of the 4 components according to your priorities and preference, though the subject line is almost always placed at the bottom. For example, if the document is time sensitive, you might place the date on top. Or if you're the president of the company and you want to be sure your employees read the memo, you might begin with the from line, reinforcing the document's importance by highlighting the importance of the author. Regardless of order, the subject line is most important of the 4 and must be constructed with care. Many readers make decisions about whether to read or disregard the document simply based on its subject. Be sure the subject line is accurate to the content and purpose of the memo. The line break you see here is optional, but is an effective visual cue for a strong separation of text sections. Notice the difference with and then without the line break. Following the heading, the body of the memo begins. It is comprised of 3 basic sections: the introduction, main body, and conclusion or closing. The introduction provides your reader with a description of the document's content and purpose, exactly an expansion of the subject line. It should be very direct, though its length will be proportional to the length and complexity of the document itself. The main body or the content of the memo can be organized and structured a number of ways depending on the purpose and quantity of information. A simple and brief memo might be 1 or 2 paragraphs with no real need for more complex formatting. This sample memo makes use of section headings, identified in red here, to orient the reader to the content of each chunk of text as well as to separate them. Section breaks can be identified in a number of ways. Any break indicates a shift of idea or subject, and the strength of the shift can be visually reinforced. The paragraph indent or space is the simplest and weakest. Bigger spaces, larger headings, and line breaks are much stronger indicators for more significant shifts. You might note here that section breaks in a memo come frequently, and that chunks of information are small. Readers' attention spans are decreasing, and reading is work we don't necessarily enjoy, especially in the working world. To accommodate this, we give the readers small bites of text and a chance to rest in between them. White space is as important as text in document design. Headings not only mark a break, they prepare the audience for the next piece of text by identifying it in advance. Headings must be accurate to their content. They can be formatted many ways by changing font qualities like bold, italic, underline, point, alignment, or spacing. This document uses spacing above the heading, +1 point, 11 point instead of 10 for the basic text, also bold and italics. Following are other variations. Bold, much larger point, no italics. And this one uses an embedded heading in bold. This last example illustrates a number of variations. At the top, underlining with a hanging indent. In the middle is a centered heading. And below, spacing above and below the heading. The combinations are endless and partially a matter of your own taste, but there are some standards for design that establish visual hierarchy and priority, such as that center alignment dominates left alignment and that larger and bolder indicate greater importance. For a complete discussion of these principles, go to the link on Document Design on our homepage and to the textbook's Page Setup section. Besides headings and spacing, other visual cues can be important to guiding a reader in presenting text clearly and concisely. A sequence or series of steps can be presented in a numbered list. The numbering reduces the amount of text and clearly establishes the relationship between points. A bulleted list also saves time and words, establishing a relationship between the points, but without establishing any order or priority. Note that any list should be introduced with an independent clause followed by a colon, and each item in the list should be punctuated properly. Finally, we have the conclusion or closing of the memo. This is not the same as the ending of a letter or the conclusion to an essay. Generally, it will be extremely brief, simply a few lines reiterating the content. In this case, the closing also ensures understanding the memo's purpose by providing an option for further action and a means of contacting the author. Contact information is an essential component that also personalizes the text. Notice that, unlike a letter, there is no complimentary close like sincerely and no end signature. When you have finished writing and checking your memo, you validate the document by signing, or more usually just initialing, beside your name in the heading. However, like a letter, typist's initials, carbon copy, enclosure tags, and other like notations are placed at the bottom of the page. This concludes your introduction to memo formatting and visual design. Now you should understand most of the basic formatting and visual design principles of memo writing. Remember, this lecture is not a comprehensive presentation of strategies, but serves as a quick supplement to your textbook and document design guidelines.